look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spend. Take another look now and take some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Oh, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Well, right now it's time for hemp.
Whoa, hey, glad you could drop by. Oh, mercy. As you can tell, it's time for hemp. All around the world with a global broadcasting network known as the Time for Hemp Network. Find us at timeforhemp.news. We're also found on Tumblr, SoundCloud, BitChute, Rumble, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, anywhere there's sound to be found on the internet, we're around making sound. And you are listening to the Time for Hemp global broadcast here on the big network. And it would be nice if you could hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, hit the like button if you like the show, and share us with your friends. We are focused on ending hemp prohibition all around the world. We are lucky that we can have a hemp industry here in America, and I know they have a great hemp industry up in Canada as well, but there are some places on the planet where they cannot utilize this fantastic plant for all the wonderful things that it can be utilized for. So as long as that problem persists, we will always be taking Time for Hemp. On the broadcast, we also have a couple of great joint hosts. And don't forget, anytime you hear the word joint on the big broadcast, we ask that you hit your pipes, your vaporizers, your bongs, your joints, and take Time for Hemp. And with that said, I'm going to take some time for hemp, but I introduce my joint host, Al Graham, up from Canada. That's a great place up above America right now. They've been leading the way in the hemp industry for a long time. And I do believe that Canada had a hemp industry about 10 years or longer before America got back to planting this valuable seed. Is that right, Al?
Yes, we've had a legal industry anyways, legal wise. Medically, we've had a medical legal system for 21, 22 years now, even actually 23 years now. But as far as recreationally, we've had it since 2018. And just so you know, even though it's been legal here in Canada since 2018, there are some places where people cannot grow their 4 plants. And that is like this because the provinces have their own rules. And it was just announced the other day that the province of Manitoba, starting the May the 1st, so in a week's time, will be able to grow 4 cannabis plants at their home.
Nice.
Yes. It's good to see them join most of us. We still have one province that is holding out, but Manitoba is joining us, which is good.
And I guess that's why you've been busy doing a thing called the PACE Network. Isn't that right?
Yes. With the Pace Radio Network, we're going around talking about cannabis advocacy. We have the news. We talk to patients. We talk to businesses, other advocates, find out what they're doing in order to help, further legalization here in Canada and elsewhere.
Awesome.
And elsewhere, and that's very important because there's many people in many countries that don't have cannabis legalization, and just because a country like Canada has it or your state has it doesn't mean that we're done yet. There's more work to be done.
And why don't you let people know how to find that fantastic network?
Oh, paceradio.net. PACE stands for People Advocating Cannabis Education.
Awesome. And we have another joint host on the big broadcast, don't we, Al?
Yes, we do. Al Byrne. He is a U.S. veteran. He's been fighting for access for medical cannabis for patients for, I'm going to say decades. He's been involved in it, working to change laws as well as, helping patients with access to cannabis through doctors or whatever. But it's very important for people to stand up and make their voices heard. And Al Byrne has been doing that for many years, and as well, he's written himself a great book. And I'm going to let him tell us all about that. Hey, Al.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Al. I actively got involved in cannabis where I spoke out. I was still on active duty. I spoke out about the idiocy of having cannabis made a illegal substance in 1983. So that was a while back.
That's a while back. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, 40 years for sure.
Yeah, and I've been doing it ever since, pretty much daily, like today. And I wrote a book. If you can read it there, it's called For Country and Cannabis, and it basically is a 40-year history, if you will, a narrative of medical cannabis in my experience. How did I interface with this plant in the Navy? I ran the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws for a few years. What happened there? Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access. I started that organization, which eventually got the VHA, the Veterans Health Administration in the United States, to declare that cannabis was a medicine and that veterans could use it within their therapeutic protocol. That happened 15 years ago, almost July of 2010. And so that's what the book is about. It's telling these stories, how cannabis as a medicine came from an unknown category. No one in 1983 was talking about medical cannabis, or even if you want to say marijuana, medical marijuana. It didn't come up. Now it's everywhere. How did that happen? The book tells you. And what it does is it describes, among other things, there's a lot of education there. That's where Al Graham and I really work together, and Casper. All three of us, whatever you think of us, you can call us activists and advocates. I think of us as educators. We have produced information constantly for years, decades, that has never, ever been challenged. I used to stand up at my conferences when I would address the opening of accredited conferences with patients at a time. And I think I said it in virtually every conference we had, dozens of them. I said, what you're going to hear here is real science, not political science. And nobody's going to say anything here, and nobody has ever questioned one sentence, one word that has ever been spoken at a patients at a time conference. Never has. So you think about that. Years and years of putting out medical cannabis education, and the United States government is speechless. And it's all in the book. Now, also in the book is people. Who did this? How did they do it? Well, one of these guys is the guy we're going to interview here in a couple of minutes, Carl Olsen from Iowa. Carl's been in this thing about as long as I have. He has a different take on what he's about. I've always been, I'm into hemp and I'm into legalization, don't get me wrong, but my expertise and where I put all my energy is in the medical aspect, therapeutic, use for patients. Carl's a religious guy, and I'm going to let him tell you his story. But his take today, he's going to concentrate on, I hope he's going to concentrate on his journey, which is decades long, on how to get the United States government to recognize cannabis as a medicine in his religion. And so with that, I want you guys to meet an old buddy of mine. We've worked together for years and years on different stuff. Carl Olsen. I think he sits in Iowa. I think you're still there. I know you worked there for years, but you've changed jobs. Carl, welcome.
Thanks, Al. Yeah, I'm in Iowa. Yeah, we share a lot of common history. I went through the 60s and was like a hippie and got involved with cannabis around the late 60s. And so right about that time, the Supreme Court threw out the law in Leary case on the tax stamp, and these Controlled Substances Acts were created. And the first thing that happened was a commission that did a study and said it should be decriminalized for personal use, and it should only be discouraged for commercial use. That personal use and sharing should be totally non-criminal. So we soon saw a rapid deterioration from there. Congress just went crazy on reefer madness, and so that got buried in history. And then, so in all these cases that I was involved in with the Coptic Church, that was between 1970 and 1980, and then the appeals went through 1990. During that time, we've always felt that all use is medical use. You've heard that. Religious use is like treating yourself right. So it's medical, however you want to look at it. There's no doubt that attitude has a lot to do with healing. And that's what religious use is all about. But, and it doesn't discount medical use. It just figures, hey, if you want to use it for medicine, you use it for that. It's a plant. So through all of this, I met Bob Randall, became a witness at our trial, and then when I went to prison, I joined the normal rescheduling petition, and in 1988, my name was on the cover of Judge Young's decision saying that marijuana in its natural form is one of the safest therapeutically active substances known to man. So through this, George McMahon and Barbara Douglas connected with me somehow here in Iowa, and we started Iowans for Medical Marijuana. And then I think I got to know you through George and Barbara, possibly. That might have been the connection. It could have been Bob Randall, but I think it was probably George and
Probably all of the
Barbara.
above. Probably all of the above. Yeah.
Yeah. So I, we started lobbying for, okay, so they're on this federal program. So this is 1990. So we're getting.
Well, now wait, just wait for just a minute. You've passed a major milestone in, in cannabis history. First of all, I was able to meet you through Jack Hare and Bob Randall. Yeah. But one thing that blew me out of the water when you've been a guest on the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network all around the world quite a few times in the past. Yeah. And one of the things that blew me out of the water when I first learned about you was that your drug bust, I hate to use the word drugs, but your cannabis bust, I think up until that time, it was the largest bust in American history, wasn't it?
Yeah, it could have been. I don't know. We were down there in Miami getting prosecuted at the Black Tuna Gang, but I think we had to be. We were huge. Anyway, so the remarkable thing about that is that was just one bust. There was multiple multi-ton busts. So I just happened to get busted in one of them. And no evidence, no weapons, no violence, no victims. With that amount of marijuana, like if there was going to be a harm from marijuana, and it's not associated with the largest bust in history, if that's true, that doesn't make sense. There's something wrong. Well, then you go back to the 1972 commission and they said the stuff isn't so bad. It should be legal for personal use. And it's like, well, hey, it's no coincidence that this herb is not associated with violence. That was well known for a long time. It just shows you the power of propaganda to vilify something and for exploitation, keep the slaves under control. But anyway,
let me just interrupt for the audience. Correct me if I'm wrong, Carl, but the Coptic Church, folks, is probably better known to a lot of you as Rastafarians, a more common name, and that whole church has, from its inception, used cannabis as a sacrament. Just right. And one of the objections to us, of course, is that, well, it's a drug. You're using a drug as a sacrament. Well, I grew up as a Catholic. I went through 16 years of Catholic education. Yeah. And I had to go to Mass, right? On Sunday. Yeah. It was required. And every time I went to Mass for all those years when I was a child, the priest on the altar was drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the difference between the alcohol sacrament and the cannabis sacrament is the alcohol sacrament is a substitute. It's a symbolic blood of
Right,
Christ.
right.
Coptics and Rastafarians, I believe this is true. I don't want to speak for all of them, but believe that cannabis is the blood of Christ, because how do the four of us even know each other? What do we all have in common?
Cannabis.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
obvious. It's
That's
a
yeah.
sacrament. It's a real thing. Yeah. And it doesn't deaden you out. It intensifies. It brings out your spirit more.
Well,
This
that is a hell of a difference. But I was just trying to make the
I'm
legal
sorry.
argument, really, that hey, if you're gonna say that you can't use a drug in a ceremony of the church, well, you're doing it.
yeah.
And of course,
Well,
there's the example of peyote in certain North American culture. That peyote is a sacrament, and they're allowed to use it. Am I right there, Carl?
yeah. So in all of my cases, I happen to live in a state that has a peyote exemption, and so between state and federal, I've never had a criminal case that didn't involve an equal protection claim with a sacramental use of peyote, saying that wasn't fair. So the way the way it all ended up is they said cannabis is more popular, so it's a bigger problem.
Well, now I got another thing that I want to point out here too, and I'm curious as to how this is progressing for you in your life, or as Dr. Phil would say, how's that working for you? When I tell the audience, anytime you hear the word joint on the big broadcast, please hit your pipes, your bongs, and your vaporizers and take time for hemp. Seamless plug there. But somebody who cannot do that, or at least will not do that, unless I'm mistaken, has not changed his path, is Carl Olsen. Isn't that right? You know, you don't hit it because you don't want to be a walking conundrum when you walk into court.
Yeah, exactly. So I exhausted my appeals in 1990, and I just told you the ruling was that cannabis is more popular, so law enforcement spends more time. It takes up more of their time than peyote does. So when I got that ruling, I thought there was no way I could win a legal case again, because that was the U.S. Supreme Court, and I'd exhausted that argument. So I decided to become an activist, and I was with George McMahon one day, and I told him, "Hey, you know, George, I'm going to quit using cannabis." So he used to. George is dead now, passed on, but he would remember that day. And so I just did that. I said, "Hey, you and Barbara are legal. You know, you're illegal under state and federal law. If I stop using it, I become legal under state and federal law. We can go around and educate people." So we started holding rallies at the Capitol, and we get a permit from the state Capitol building saying these people can smoke marijuana on the steps of the Capitol, get it in writing so that we had evidence to show people. And then they would proceed to do that, and we'd get publicity. And we had another guy, Lad Huffman, that had applied for the program the same time as Barbara, who was denied and had MS just like she did. And there was just something, forgot to dot an I or cross a T or something, made the difference between him getting the medicine and not, and her getting it. So we did all of that, and then we got a bill in '83, I think it was. I'm sorry, 93. We got a bill in 93 from the Senate, 50-0, to allow patients to grow this at home. And then it died in they took that out and said, no, it had to be confiscated. And then it went to the House, and they said, there's no way we're going to give confiscated grass to medical patients. And it died there. So I kind of got discouraged, and then we saw California come online in '96, and so then I started working with patients out of time, and I became the state director for NORML. And I was thinking that NORML, in '92, I became the state director for NORML for 10 or 11 years. And it was my thinking we could direct NORML to take a completely medical focus. And so Al knows from in his book that I was in communication with him by then, and there was a lot of controversy in NORML about what direction NORML would go. So I just decided to take the state chapter in that direction. And then you've got Gonzalez versus Leitch comes out and says that you don't have the right to homegrown in California after it was legalized there for medical use. And then we had a ruling like that in Iowa the same year from a guy named Bonnier, and he had cancer, and they busted him for homegrown and wouldn't allow the medical necessity defense because of that Leitch case. But in there they said, well, if it was medicine, the Board of Pharmacy would say so. And I thought, aha! So George and Barbara and I incorporated and petitioned the pharmacy board to recognize the medical value. Patients Out of Time, Al's group wrote a tremendous catalog of medical stuff, and Marijuana Policy Project helped with that. Drug Policy Alliance helped with it. Normal helped with it. Anyway, we got experts from all over the world. The pharmacy board took it seriously, held 4 public hearings in 4 cities, 8 hours each, certified court reporter. And we knocked it out of the ballpark. They recommended it be reclassified and that Iowa establish a program, and the legislature just rejected that. But
was it Tabby Rickert and May Nutt also involved with some of your work?
No, I know who they are, but I don't think so. I attended every one of those 8 hearings and testified at 4 hearings and testified at them, and I've got the transcripts of all of them. So if they were involved, it would be in there somewhere.
That's
well,
great.
They were pretty active in that field, so I was thinking that you all worked together in a couple of projects. My bad. Didn't mean to interrupt. I'll let Al Byrne go on with the next question.
Over my time, I've shifted from a federal focus to a state focus because I think the state has leverage at the federal level that it's not using properly.
Let me just interrupt here for our audience. Carl has mentioned some names: Barbara Douglas, George McMahon. Both of them are gone now, but they were involved. They were among the first patients that received medical cannabis from the federal government for free for life. And this is, again, at a time when the federal government said this stuff is not medicine, but they're giving it to patients as medicine. These 2 individuals were concerned. Barbara Douglas was an MS patient, and George had a very rare disease that I can't even pronounce.
Nail patella syndrome.
Nail patella syndrome, which is a terrible disease. You don't live very long. And anyway.
Yeah, kind of like Irv's thing with the bone spurs or whatever.
Yeah, same kind of thing. And so these were terrible diseases. They were absolutely helped by the medical cannabis that they were given by the government, even though it was awful stuff. The quality was terrible. The way it was handled, grown, packaged, it's just a mess. But it still helped them. And Patients Out of Time, again, my organization in 2001, we'll get back to where Carl is right now in the 90s, but 2001, we took these patients, including these 2 guys, and you can look it up online. It's called the Missoula Study. It's really a study of chronic cannabis use by the federal patients. So there were 5 federal patients at the time, and I put them all. They all eventually got on my board of directors to have the world know that we're going to stand up. These were stand-up people. These were ordinary U.S. citizens who were getting cannabis from the United States government and calling out that government at the same time for not giving it to everybody. These people were definitely heroes and heroines and will remain so in my mind forever. May not was on my board of directors, but she was not involved at this time with Carl. So now Carl's got this stuff, and this is where he went different. I stayed federal. Carl went state. So what happened when you started to use the states as a leverage against the feds?
Well, I had a lot more fun. I got to know a lot more local people. Getting to know legislators and stuff at your local level. How do you do that with Congress people? Especially, and like you only have so many in your state, and so no, I like this much better. So where I stopped with the pharmacy board thing was 2010, and so at that time Obama was issuing these memos 2009, 2011, 2013, that they wanted the states to conglomerate these marijuana businesses. That before 2010, we had states with homegrown medical use, but we didn't have these large organizations running cannabis until around 2010, and the Obama administration encouraged that. And of course, I should say encouraged it. They just gave in. I mean, it was going on, and the Obama administration said to hell with it and caved in on it. So it wasn't them doing it. It was just them acknowledging reality. But then, so at that point, Iowa didn't dive in until 2014, and we dove in with a possession-only law that said you could go into Colorado and get products there and bring them back into Iowa. And that persisted till about 2017, when they set up a growing licenses and distribution and manufacture in the state of Iowa. So my religious claim completely fizzled out on the peyote exemption, but now there's an equal protection claim based on my sacrament, cannabis. You've got the sacred use on my side, and you've got the profane on the other side, because every one of these organizations is a federal criminal organization, and all you have to do is look at their income taxes. They can't take cost of goods sold deductions. They have to pay an effective tax rate of 70% because of IRS code section 280E. And so that is like the state's version of medical use. Okay, we're going to give you this stuff because you need it for everything, but we're going to turn it over to the mafia to run it, and you have to voluntarily violate federal drug law to participate in it.
Yeah.
That's how can they say that is a greater public value than religious freedom? So, but Iowa's one of these states where you can't sue the government on an implied cause of action for violating your constitutional rights. But last year, they enacted a Religious Freedom Restoration Act that says, yes, you can sue the government for violating your constitutional rights. And I have a case I've just filed that Al was talking about before the show. So that comes in. Okay, so that's 2017. And then in 2018, the federal government comes along and legalizes hemp with pure THC. Okay, so now we've got pure THC in a beverage being sold in the grocery store. I can just walk up the street and go get me a can of THC and bring it home and slurp it down. We've changed our medical program now so the products can have 100% THC potency, and that's the highest. 85% of the sales are that product in a vape device. So we've got people, and another thing is, because cannabis has no accepted medical use in the United States as an unsafe for use under supervision, medical supervision, we don't supervise it. Simple. It's not medically supervised. You just go get this stuff at the dispensary, take it home, and use it however. 100% THC in a vape pen.
Well, all right, now my question now is, all this time you said that you would not be participating in the utilization of any type of cannabis, so that you would not be a walking conundrum when you walked into court. That was a fucking mouthful. My question.
That's it, though. You got it.
Thank you. My question for you right now is, do you go down to the 7-Eleven, get yourself a big old can of THC and slurp it down? Do you stroll in and get yourself a vape pen and enjoy some vape?
It's so weird. I mean, it's distilled or something. I don't even know how they make it. Okay, I mean, it doesn't look like a plant material. It's some kind of stuff that's a waste byproduct of hemp production. They put it in steel barrels and sell it as THC distillate, and then they inject that into stuff. And so, yeah, I've used this stuff, but man, that is a weird way to get high. I mean, it doesn't have all the other stuff the plant has in it. It's just in a, like, who knows where it's been or what. I mean, I suppose there's some safety regulations, but the only thing I can tell you is that you can feel it. I mean, it brought back memories, like 35 years since I'd felt that feeling. It was bizarre to, so, No, that I'm not going to let them hold me hostage, make me go buy that crap instead of having my sacrament.
Good. And
Well,
so,
what's your
does your church offer sacrament? I didn't mean to interrupt, Al. I'm sorry. Does your church offer free sacraments to anybody who strolls in and says, "I want to worship here"?
No, our articles of incorporation say that the only thing you can do is get a state and federal exemption, and once you have that, you're in. Until then, you can't practice.
All right, so what are you doing now legally? You filed a motion where to do what?
Well, I've been arguing with the legislature about and the department about getting an exemption for our cannabis program, and I showed them the peyote exemption and said, if a church can have an exemption, so can a state medical program. And the doctors on the board just loved it. They voted unanimous in favor. And plus, we have a police officer on there that's like the head of the State Police Association or something like that, and he voted for it. And so we got the legislature to enact that into law in 2020, and the department filed that with the DEA in 2021, and the DEA hasn't responded to it. So what I've been doing is working to get a legal committee saying, hey, if you're going to recognize that medical cannabis should have a board of medical professionals overseeing the program, didn't it dawn on you that this is a complex legal issue and you might want to have a task force of legal professionals look at this as well? And then I told them I have the answer to this whole thing. We can get federal authorization the same way the church got it for peyote. And they said, that sounds like the only reason we don't have one is we're not working on it. We're not telling the federal government we want it. And the standard for 21 USC 822D is where that peyote exemption comes from. And it says if it's consistent with public health and safety, it doesn't say it has to be a religious cause. It's any good cause. And that's where you can't have the government favoring religious activity over secular activity because it violates the Establishment Clause. So now you've got both halves of the thing. You've got the Establishment Clause that protects the secular use, the medical use, and you've got the Free Exercise Clause that protects the religious use, and the two things balance, and you don't leave one hanging without the other.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
so I've got a case I filed with the DEA in 2022 for a religious exemption under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and I filed with the state this year in district court. And that page that Al just brought up, that's all the court filings in my court case. So I'm arguing that all of the secular activity that they're authorizing, the THC and the medical program and in the grocery store, evaporates their compelling interest in prohibiting religious use, that they've completely undercut themselves and abandoned the whole thing. They don't even know why marijuana was made illegal. It's because it has THC in it. So they've completely undercut their argument, and they don't really see it because they don't know what cannabis plants are and THC is. Like, they don't know that THC is the thing in the marijuana.
Well, now this is all groovy too. Now this focuses on people who want to utilize cannabis as a sacrament for their religion. Does this also in some way or another compensate people like Catholics and Baptists who just smoke cannabis religiously?
Well, I can't litigate for a group. So that's another flaw in all of my old cases. I kept saying the church, I wanted an exemption for the church. Unless you're a licensed attorney, you can't represent anyone else in court. So you can only represent yourself. So that's something I've learned. So the question would be is, if I win this case, would it open the door to somebody else obtaining a religious exemption? And it's like, well, in theory, I suppose, would they have to work as hard at it as I have, or would it be easier for them? Or like, how would they establish that this wasn't something they just made up on the spot because they heard about my successful decision? And then, how would they weave it into the practice of their church? In theory, what you said, I would agree that anybody that goes in and says, I'm using this religiously, and if they ask them, well, when did you start doing that? Say 1 minute ago, that's a valid claim, in my opinion. Don't you think? I mean, who should be able to tell you that you don't have religious freedom at any point in your life, at any time?
But anybody who knows me well will know that I began smoking this religiously when I hit 16 and found my first bag.
Well, that's what I said. What is the thing that we all have in common?
I just want to back up a little bit. You mentioned something there about representation and how, you know, you can represent yourself. And so I'm listening to talk about all these, you know, court fights and the federal fights and stuff. And I thought to myself, geez, is this guy got training as a lawyer, or is he just somebody who's so dedicated to this that you've gone out and educated yourself and you sound like a lawyer, like as far as professionally being able to do all this?
What happened is that I was on parole in Iowa, and I went to live in Miami at the church headquarters, and that was where all the attorneys came through there. Ramsey Clark was one of our attorneys. Bob Randall is one of our witnesses. So I just met a whole ton of people with expert witnesses and lawyers, and so I sat there and I thought, you know, there's no amount of money in this world that can buy a good legal defense. You really have to tell your lawyer what to do. Your lawyer can't tell you what to do. It's your life. And the lawyer's representing you. The lawyer has to just be technical. The lawyer can't be thinking up your case for you. So, and then I thought, this just isn't being done right. We're throwing all this money at these lawyers and saying, you guys figure it out. Now, we thought the First Amendment was no harm, no foul. So we thought the First Amendment was like, if you can't show anybody injured by this, then it's protected by religious freedom because there's no harm. You can't deny religious freedom. But to my surprise, we've become such a heavy regulatory state, or what I'm trying to say, the government has become so complicated that just doesn't work anymore. So there's a substantial deference to the legislature by the courts that keeps growing and growing because they don't want the government to break down. And another thing is these judges just can't, anyway, the technicality of the whole thing. So in theory, you might think the First Amendment would do it, but you have a much better argument if you can show the government is mistreating you because of some other activity that they're allowing, and then saying you can't do the same thing or something similar to it. So that's why now I have such a better case, because I've got more substance to work with.
So do you have to show that, what do they call that? You have standing?
Yeah. They're saying I don't have standing because I haven't been arrested again, and I'm saying that's ridiculous. I've been arrested enough times now to have a legitimate fear of the government, and that's my injury.
Yeah.
I'm permanently traumatized.
You've been arrested enough times to run for political office.
Huh? Oh, yeah, I ran for governor.
It sounds like
representative.
Yeah, situation of some PTSD, as we call it, injury, because of the trauma of just going through all this.
Yeah. I shouldn't have to get arrested again to prove that theoretically I could be arrested again. That's like obvious. Like if it weren't for the law, I would be sitting here smoking a pipe or whatever. And not only that, I wouldn't be thinking for myself either.
It makes you wonder who thinks up this shit. I mean, because anybody who would sit down and tell you that and have those words come out of their mouth and really take their own self seriously is beyond comprehension.
Yeah. Hey, Carl, you mentioned Miami. I just want to throw a name at you, see if you get a smile. Tom Riley.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I just got a video. Somebody went and enhanced all the old videos that we made and had them digitally AI remastered and everything. So I got one of Tom Riley presenting to the legislature down in Miami at the Dade County Community College. Oh, wow. And he's in there with a whole bunch of people with, you know, the brothers and sisters are there, and he's got the video thing with the church service in Jamaica with all the people singing, you know, thousands of people in a temple, and he's telling them that he wants a religious exemption from the Florida statutes. And I thought, damn, where did I get my, you know, where I get my direction from, you know. So, but the thing is that they were under federal, they'd already been indicted by every government that you can think of, and they're making a last stand Hail Mary there. And then one of the guys says, well, when do you want us to legalize polygamy and sacrificial murder?
No.
And Riley goes, have some manners. And I just thought, yeah, he's sitting there burning them out and everything. And the next day he's in federal prison for 20 years. I mean, like, so I just thought this requires more planning and execution. I mean, the execution was flawless, but the planning wasn't there, like the preparation, you know. And so yeah, Tom Riley was just incredible, you know.
Somebody's going to have to look up a book. I mean, write a book about this. I know this fellow Riley because I went to high school with him. I was in high school for 4 years, and we didn't hang out. I was a hockey player, and he was a basketball player, so we were. You know,
he was 6'7".
But Riley ended up. He went to Seton Hall, a Catholic university, and got out. And the next time I saw him was on NBC News in Miami, talking to Molly Sather or somebody like that.
Yeah, and, it was Dan Rather.
Yeah, Dan Rather, and he was. I got this wrong, but didn't he claim he was like the leader of all the Rastafarians in the United States or something? Wasn't that his claim?
I don't know.
No, not that.
The title Brother Love, I mean, we obviously thought we were the ones. And he was Brother Love. So in theory, I suppose you could twist that out of it. I'm not sure he would deny that, but I don't think he would claim it either. I would just think he would just go, if you want to believe that, believe it. If you don't, don't. I mean,
yeah, but he was very much a spokesperson for that issue.
Oh yeah, because we had to. No, he did that role. He was the face of the church, and he represented the whole entire movement. I mean, like I'm just telling you, we saw it as being a medicine, a food, you know, an industrial material, all of it, you know.
And
so
right.
we didn't silo it off into little pieces and then have each one start a war with each other, like Hemp. And
so you used that Miami history that went bad for all those folks, and you said, okay, there's got to be another approach. And I know you are self-educated. You got more knowledge of.
Well, for 4 years or 5 years, I sat there and listened to all these lawyers come through, and then I would listen to the legal arguments they were making, and then I would go to the Dade County Law Library and the University of Miami Law Library and read up a bunch of stuff. Yeah. And then I got the church to purchase me subscriptions to these Southwest Law Reporter, or Southeast it would have been for that area, and the federal reports and the U.S. I had a big giant room down at Star Island in Miami with all kinds of law books like that. And then when I went to federal prison, they made me run the law library, and I shelved the Federal Register and got familiar with that. And that's when I saw they were having these hearings on the normal rescheduling petition and got involved in that because I was right there in the law library and had access to the materials. And so I put that all together from in there. And then when I got out of prison, I went to community college and got a paralegal degree. But I don't have, that's the extent of it. But if you spent that much time studying law, I went through the paralegal program and got straight A's without even trying because I was already that up to speed on it. So, but then I got into computers and stuff, and I became a clerical for the Iowa Department of Transportation for 13 years, a web developer for a small commercial hosting company. And then I got employed by Drake University for 17 years to work in their marketing department and then in their IT department. And then I just got a job last year for a 6-month contract at the University of Virginia School of Nursing. How's that for coincidence? So I worked there for 6 months just last year.
My first introduction to cannabis as a religious sacrament came from Roger Christie. Has his work had any impact on your path?
No, he called me once from Colorado and told me he was going to start that thing and wanted me to help him with it. And I said, I'm already taken. I'm going to dance with the one that brought me.
Because he was doing this in Hawaii back when Jack Hare was stomping around talking about his book. So Roger's
Yeah, I didn't hear from Roger till after I got out of prison, and he told me he was going to start the THC ministry. So as far as I know, he came afterward. You know, as far as I know, what Roger Christie did, and I'm sure he's not the only one, but they looked at this thing that we did and thought, I can do better. I can do that better. So that I just, you know, and who's to say? I mean, like, Godspeed, good luck, best wishes.
Any part of your path that you've walked that you regret?
No, because everything that goes wrong ends up being a lesson. So, no.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Oh, Graham, you've been rather quiet. I'm sure you've got a couple of questions.
I think all the good it did for me. So.
Yeah, the other thing with that is every time that somebody like Carl takes on an argument with the feds, even if he loses, as he did, because it's too popular. I mean, Jesus, the Fed loses. Every one of these cases, even if they win, you know, in the sense that the case is not given to the person that's got the problem, that we've stumbled through another step.
But look at what you got with this one, though. You got the First Amendment, you've got the religious clause in the Iowa Constitution, then you've got a Federal Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which is, to your point here, and now you've got a State Religious Freedom Restoration Act. So what happens? People lose these cases. Congress, the legislature, gets pissed off about it, and then they enact a new law to change the playing field.
Exactly.
So what you just said is exactly right. It all ends up going somewhere. It's information. It affects how people act. So everything has value.
Yep, even a loss, if you want to think of it that way. But a loss
carefully, if you understand, yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
you understand the loss, yeah.
Now, when it comes to frog on my throat, the religious use of cannabis, there's lots of people who, you know, just consume cannabis, whether it's recreationally, medicinally, and of course, people do religiously. So what do you do as far as presenting your case to a court to talk to them about how you do this? And, you know, I'm assuming they'd be looking for certain kinds of information, just not you just saying.
Unfortunately, I have overload. So I'm not a good example for anybody else because nobody's going to have the amount of evidence that I have. But so Clifton Middleton, who is one of the main figures in the church, wrote a book, just fabulous, Ganja Warrior Priest, on Amazon. Alan Myerson, who lived with Keith Gordon just about all the time with him in Jamaica, has done a series of podcasts in South Africa, an hour each, 10 episodes that just explains in detail what was happening down there. Tons and tons of video. Like I just said, we're having all this stuff digitally remastered right now with AI enhancement. So if you want to see how it was, because if you want to see how it is now, it's like you're seeing it right there. Or no, wait a minute. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Gone.
Yeah, the government said that's an illegal religion, and if you practice it, don't tell anybody. Because
no, and I'm assuming they're saying that just because your sacrament under law is illegal.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah. No, the lesson of my church is that it's a civil rights movement, and this is a basic human right, a natural birthright.
Yeah, it's like our generation has spent a lifetime hiding our little habit, stepping behind a tree, hiding behind a shrub. When we were kids, we used to hide it. When we were kids, we used to hide it from our parents. Now that when we became adults, we hid it from our kids. And now that we're grandparents,
we hid it. Yeah.
Yeah. Now we smoke it with our drink.
Yeah.
We hid it until we got so much that we couldn't hide it. 20 tons is difficult to hide.
20 tons.
You know, we tried our best, but
Let's
Certain
let's
bags.
just shift a little bit. Carl, I know you're doing some work with mushrooms. Could you tell us update on that?
Yeah. So we have a red state. We have like 2/3 of our House and Senator Republicans. Our governor's Republican. They've been in, just getting more and more control every year. So you would not expect. Well, anyway, certain things happen. I think when a party gets that comfortable, I think that they don't spend so much time worrying about where they're at. They start looking around at stuff. They just figure, well, we got to use our power for something. So we have a guy that's on the in the House who's a 25-year veteran of one of the things, and he's into PTSD, or traumatic, brain just, all the things, that injuries that come with the military.
We call post-traumatic stress injury.
Yeah, traumatic brain something, or anyway, there's other ones too. But he went to a conference in Colorado, Colorado, and they talked about psilocybin, and he came back converted. That some guy you would never expect to be involved in drug policy reform, he came back totally converted. And that there's another representative in this House that I've known for 15 or 20 years. He's an advocate. He introduces bills to legalize cannabis, and he's introduced bills to legalize psilocybin. And so he hooked up with this guy because he knows a lot about psilocybin and stuff like that. So these two kind of tag teamed it through, and they got it through 84-6 a couple of days ago in the House, and it's pending in the Senate right now. And so he talked about all the conventional treatments for these disorders, saying they're mind-altering chemicals and you're on them for life. And he said this stuff can cure people in one setting. One treatment can actually cure them, or at least improve. He said it opens your mind and allows you to confront whatever it was that's causing you this trouble and see it more clearly, and then come to some kind of resolution of that. And from my experience when I was a kid of using hallucinogens, that sounds familiar to me. That describes kind of the feelings that I got when I was on some of this stuff like LSD and mescaline and different things, and certainly not on stimulants or depressants or alcohol or opiates or anything like that, or even cocaine. I don't think ever gave me any kind of insight into anything. But so anyway, it was just marvelous. I made a video of it. It's on YouTube, and you can hear the speech the guy gave on the floor of the House. So anyway, in the bill, it says that you have to agree to violate federal drug law. And so it's not left to the imagination like it is in the Medical Cannabis Act, okay? And also there's an amendment going through to eliminate the monopoly. Now any company can own every single medical marijuana business in Iowa. Before it was limited to 3 dispensaries. Now it's going to be one company can own all 10 dispensaries and all methods of manufacture. So the psilocybin bill says that the person who holds those licenses can also hold a production for psilocybin license. So now they're going to see what I mean when the Obama administration said that they should consolidate these businesses into well-run units. That's exactly what's going on here in Iowa. We have Chemin Industries, and they have Med Farm, and they're in Colorado. They have one of the federal bulk manufacturing licenses, Schedule I bulk manufacturing licenses. They're in Iowa, running under Bud and Mary's, which was the name of the people who started Chemin Industries, Bud and Mary Nelson. And so the psilocybin bill is tied to the medical bill at the umbilical cord. And it also says, it even refers to the medical marijuana program in the psilocybin bill, saying all of this is going to be merged into one thing. So now what you've got, and then it also took out the word PTSD and says it can be any traumatic, any kind of a mental injury. They took that out on the amendment, and they also said that they're going to open it up to adding ayahuasca and ibogaine and all these different things that are natural plant substances and Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substances Act. They want to make this the alternate to prescription drugs program, the natural substance,
Okay.
alternate to the
All right.
pharmaceutical bullshit. So
It's a thing. It works.
yeah, so we love progress, but we don't like the fact that they can't figure out how to get the federal exemption. Like, come on.
Well, yeah, wait, come on, federal government, just change the laws. Like, come on, get it done.
HHS just came out with all the evidence you need for this.
Yeah.
It's federal.
Yeah.
And so we've got to think about this. If you're going to give somebody with PTSD who swore an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States a psychedelic drug like psilocybin and tell them you have to agree to violate federal law to do this, I think that could add to somebody's trauma. I don't know about you, but I would be traumatized by that.
Yeah.
Like, what did I just sign? Like,
really? Will I be arrested while I'm tripping?
and then I'm back to Leary. They overturned the tax stamp because it was a violation of self-incrimination. Well, look at here. Back to
you mentioned that there's just a small group of companies, or 1 or 2 companies that are doing everything. Is there any chance of things to open up? Like you've got, obviously there's changes in government.
Well, yeah, my thing would open it up because they'd no longer have to agree to violate federal drug law and legitimate businesses would compete. But I don't know that would solve the antitrust problem. The reason that they got rid of this antitrust thing is because it's really hard to find good people willing to violate federal drug law. So you get rid of the antitrust thing for that. But if you go the other direction and say it's legal, well, now you probably don't want to have a big monopoly running all of it. So that there's all these different things tugging back and forth, going this way and that way. My thing is, like, we need to do this because it's the right thing to do. Fuck all the money.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, pardon my French.
It's all right.
Don't you ever come to the point, look, you're older than I am, and I'm 100 years old. Don't you just feel like as you're going into court that somebody else needs to be doing this shit? I can't be doing this no more.
Of course, but I have to get that. I have to find them, and so yeah, I've got some irons in the fire. I've got an attorney that has been working with me that's pretty good at this stuff. He's got a case in the U.S. Supreme Court right now on search and seizure, but he's kind of busy. He sent me his brief. It's really good, but and then I've got, I worked with the ACLU before, and like I said, I worked with the Marijuana Policy Project, Drug Policy Alliance, NORML. I've got all kinds of connections, but I have to, how do you get these people to give up their pet causes to take up this one? Because there's no money in it. You're just doing this for patients.
You're singing to the choir.
Yeah.
We know.
Yeah, we know.
Nevertheless, I think I have been making progress.
And that's the important thing, that you're making progress. Yeah.
Yeah.
Carl, look, we're going to have to cut her off here a little bit. Oh yeah, you've been great, man. And but listen, is there any way, or do you want anybody to know how to publicly get a hold of you with questions or anything, or would you just assume?
Yeah, if you look at the video here, and under my name, it's got my website there.
Okay.
Yeah, all you got to do is open up one of those PDFs, and it'll have phone number and email on it, and my name and address is all over, all tons of stuff. So I won't bother to go through that now because it's right, that link, just follow that link there.
Carl-Olsen.com.
So I don't want you to give away any secrets, because but so how are you going to fuck with them next?
That's what I was wondering. What's the future?
Well, I've got some legislators interested in discussing the federal exemption over the interim, and one of the doctors on our medical board wants to go with me to lend credibility. This guy we really did say what he says we said, and we really do support him. We have his back, and that's the one thing. And then I've got a court hearing on my, the state has moved to dismiss my religious freedom lawsuit, and there's a hearing on that on May the 8th, but it is a court Zoom, and there's no public participation on those. So,
Oh, yeah.
and there's a big warning on there saying, do not record this. So I'm not going to.
Yeah, leave it alone. Yeah.
Yeah, I can order a transcript of it, and if they make those, I've never been on one of these court Zooms before, so I don't know if they record those and make them available for appeal record and things like that. I do have a fairly large national group that wants to get involved if it goes to an appeal, and I think if I win, the state will appeal it, and if the state wins, I will appeal it. So yeah, it's going to the Iowa Supreme Court for sure. So that's another thing. And then, you know, I keep reading computer technology, so I'm studying up on that, and you know, I'll update my resume eventually here and get it back out on all the job sites and see if I can.
So you've been practicing law.
Cannabis people.
Law.
Huh?
Hire this guy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know people that are into hemp cultivation here in Iowa. So I'm keeping my eye on that, and we're good friends. We talk all the time. So, you know, there might be some way I could migrate into that eventually. And they're not breaking any laws.
Yeah.
You know, that's big.
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing with the federal government, you know, we all agree, and I would just tell you that, you know, the federal law, the prohibition says there is prohibited because there is no known medical use in the United States of America. That's the reason it's not big.
Yeah, but the
yeah,
HHS just came out with a different formula, and it's not that one. And the Office of Legal Counsel officially affirmed that the DEA has to accept it. And the DEA is being stubborn, but Shane Pennington is suing the hell out of them. So we'll see. And also, I just saw yesterday that Trump is getting rid of all the higher ups at the DEA, so there won't be that institutional mind block garbage. There'll be some fresh set of eyes on this. That was really encouraging to me, and I recognize some of the names that he's going to get rid of, and that they're key people that you'll see their names on all this bullshit for the last 10 or 15 years, and that could be good or bad. I mean, Trump is hard to predict, but I'm just saying, God, I'm ready for a change.
Yeah, anytime the DEA hierarchy can be removed that we've had to play with, and here's the thing, I think I'm still involved in 2 letters to the DEA that are requesting information. One of them goes back 12 years, and one of them goes back 9, and that's what they do. You're a citizen, you ask for information, and they just don't answer. They just ignore you.
The General Accounting Office reamed them out last year and said they're doing a terrible job of implementing these religious freedom exemption requests. And mine's one of them. I'm in the GAO report telling the DEA they're doing a terrible job. So hopefully they'll dust off that GAO report with this new set of DEA officials and take a serious look at that.
I would hope so. We all want the DEA to get out of the scheduling business for medicine. They don't belong there.
Oh,
I mean, just think about that.
They messed up
that
now.
Yeah, well, I mean, look who's deciding that. The DEA. What's the DEA?
Yeah.
Excuse me, but they're either law enforcement or they're lawyers.
I'll take HHS right now, but that's easy to say since they just came out on our side. But anyway.
Yeah. But I mean, they're making medical decisions. All these people that you've talked about in Iowa, that you've tried to convince over the years that it's medicine, how many of them have been healthcare professionals? 1-2%? So you've got a bunch of guys that know nothing about medicine.
Well, yeah, the thing is that if I go in and talk to a healthcare professional, the one thing I know for sure is they're going to know about administrative law and red tape. So I've got an immediate connection there. I know how to talk to that person. I know how to get my point across. It doesn't take very long for me to get acknowledgement that I know what I'm talking about, because they're the only audience that would understand what I'm saying. And when I tell them we need a legal task force for the same reason, they also get that because they know they don't have that, and they know I'm right. And they know I can't carry the whole legal load, so I need somebody to help me. And they know that they're there and helping me on the medical side to make sure that stays safe and respectable, how that's being done by the mafia. But anyway.
Well, Carl, thank you for coming. You've given us a lot of insight. I hope the audience has learned a lot about you, the government, the state of Iowa, and some of the stuff that the illogical decisions that we are all having to live with. And you're right up there. You always have been. You're right out in front. You said, my name is Carl Olsen, and I'm here to tell you that you're wrong. And everybody that has ever known you appreciates that and respects you, and that includes me. So personally, really appreciate you coming by.
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed reading your book. It shares so much history. It's just, like I said, going back to when was that, when we got together, like 90 or something, or 88, somewhere back in there.
Something like that.
So everything in your book, like half of your book is stuff I heard from you before.
Yeah, it's all true. See, people, it's all true.
Yeah, as much as I know.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Carl.
Yeah, thanks,
you, Carl. Really appreciate it.
And I want to remind people out there that Al Byrne and Carl Olsen and I, and almost Al Graham, have lived long enough to be able to say that we have lived through 2/3 of our country's history. That dawned on me the other day when I was counting on my fingers how many years I've been alive, and I had to get bags of beans out and count all that too. And we've been around for a while. We've seen quite a bit. We've watched this movement grow, and we've seen it progress from a mess where if you just said the word marijuana out loud, you were thrown against the wall, to where, as Carl said, you're going down to 7-Eleven and getting a can of it to slurp down.
Now
Carl,
we're trying to figure out how to make it work right.
Right. And I've enjoyed having you back on as a guest. I want to remind people that we do have a large archive that also includes not only Al Graham and I, but also not only Al Byrne and I, but also Al Graham. He's been a joint host on the Big Broadcasting Network. Also did his own show, Pace, on the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. I'm currently unearthing his archives. They'll be soon available on the timeforhemp.news site. Al Graham, why don't you speak up and let the world know about Pace Network and how wonderful it is and why they need to tune in and listen to you and all your friends.
All righty. Thanks for the opportunity. PACE, which stands for People Advocating Cannabis Education Radio Network. You can find it at paceradio.net. Not only do we discuss with patients, business owners, as well as advocates about the benefits of cannabis, but we also have programming that includes psychedelics. We have new programs that come out every day of the week, including on the weekends. So check us out, paceradio.net.
And I also want to let the people out there who are listening know that my other joint host, I love that word, joint, and joint host as Al Byrne. Not only was he a joint host many times on the Big Broadcasting Network, he puffing out there. He also had his own programs, Patients at a Time and Veterans Voices. Those archives are available on the timeforhemp.news website. And Al Byrne brought on to some of those shows the people that we were talking about today, didn't you, Al Byrne?
Yeah, that's the thing about our archive. It's there, it's available, and the interviews that we have there, hundreds of them, are much like this one. We brought in an expert. We got expert advice, opinion, and history, and it is all said by the person that was involved in that history. And that's exactly what our interviews have been over the years. We bring in the man, the woman who knows exactly what went down, and we let them talk about it. And the history there is enormous. I touch on a tad of it in my book for Country and Cannabis. And I try to like involve people like Carl so that somebody reading that book 10 years from now as a history book knows, oh, that's who did this. That's how they did it. That's the perseverance and the skill and the intelligence that they displayed to take this forward. It's a good book. There's a lot of education in there. There's a lot of information in there, and there's a lot of history too, I guess, about good guys. I emphasize good guys in the book, but I point out the assholes. There's a number of them, both at the federal level, the state level, and even the guys I had to deal with face to face. And I identify them too, because to my mind, they were in the way, and they are still in the way. I point out to people often because I'm proud of it. There's been a lot of drug reform organizations that have popped up in America. Some are still here. Some come, they go. There's only one that ever had a name that led with the group that it was about. Patience out of time. Everything else will start, they'll tell you they're national, they're American, they're big deals. Hey, I'm an American, I'm a bullshit. Patience is what this is all about. The book is all about patience. It's stories of patience, both in the military and out. Patients like we have mentioned, Barbara Douglas, George, patients that were federal patients that stood up to the federal government, patients you've never heard of. A guy like Ladd Huffman, a wonderful man. So yeah, read the book, listen to Al's radio station, help. If you're in a call, needs help, if you're an attorney and you can help him, give him a call. He'd love it. And thanks again. Casper, take us home.
And also, Carl Olsen, as I was digging through my archives over the weekend, I discovered that I remember that you did about 50 shows on the big broadcasting network, all legalese, all rather interesting. And I'll be unearthing those along the way as well. And when I do mean the Global Broadcasting Network, I am not kidding. There was a time when we were producing about 20 different shows a week on the internet, and those archives are full of lots of information and knowledge that is important for you to share with all your friends. Please hit the like and subscribe button below. That is how we get found. As Carl also said, no one's underwriting this. We do this because we love cannabis and we love our country, and we love telling the whole world how important it is to take time for hemp.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spend. Take another look and spend some time for him. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes, it's time for him. Whoa, an acre of hemp makes 20 bales of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rest. Well, time for help! Yeah!